Happy New Year! Happy New Year! Happy New Year! It's 2021. And yes, we have finally made it to day one of the brand new year. I hope you all celebrated last night in your own way. It's funny, I got a text message from a friend who said to me she didn't know whether she was going to even get dressed up to go to the living room on New Year's Eve, that maybe she would just skip it all together. Well, some of us may have even been in the bed and missed the whole coming of the new year, while other of us may have been on our cell phones or our laptops or computers watching the watch night services from churches all across the nation. And so we want to thank all of those who decided to do some type of programming for the new year. Some may have been even watching the ball drop or whatever dropped in New York City since you couldn't get there. But whatever it was, I'm glad that you have survived 2020. I'm glad that we have had all the experiences of that year that are going to sort of inform us and teach us and show us the strength and the tenacity that we have to make it through, and that 2021 is only going to be much, much better. And so, of course, with everything that you did, I hope that you did also remember to stay safe. We are still in the midst of a pandemic. COVID-19 has not gone away. We've been fortunate now before the end of the year to know that there's a vaccination or two out there, and there's still controversy around these vaccinations. But the point is, we want our government, we want our doctors, we want our scientists, we want our community organizations, our medical associations to continue to find ways to deal with these viruses. But it's all up to you and me, folks. It's all up to you and me. Sanitation is probably one of the best things we could have always done, and that is to wash our hands. Unfortunately, we have to wear masks, so that's a sort of something that's overdoing it, but right now it's what we have to do. Wear our masks and stay socially distant. 6 feet is what has been asked. I know that some of us have crept in a couple of inches or two, and probably last night we even crept in a couple of feet. But we want to make sure that we stay safe and get through 2021 healthy, more prosperous, and that everything goes as well as we want it to do. Today we're going to take a look back through 2020 through the eyes of the Washington Informer. I don't know if you were able to pick up a copy of the Informer. This is our annual our year in review. This year we looked at 2020. We have some fantastic stories in here from our writers who cover subjects all across the spectrum, everything from entertainment, sports, religion, politics, focus on Prince George's County, national news. We do it all. And we're so happy that I'm proud of our Washington Informer team for keeping the ball in the air all of 2021. It was a little tough on us. As we talked about before, we couldn't print as many papers, but hey, we gave birth to rWIN-TV, and you're with us today, so thank you for being a part of our family. But our writers, despite it all, were actually out there, and photographers, let me not forget them, for capturing some of the images of so many things, the anniversary of the March on Washington, the protests that happened almost every week, and in some cases every day. So we had our folks out there, and I'm really proud of the work that they've done. And I want you to pick up, like I said, a copy of the Informer if you can, because they're on newsstands now, and so they're available all over the DMV. If you can't find a copy, you can also go to our website and find out where the newspapers are being delivered. Or if you just want to read it online, you can go to www.washingtoninformer.com. There you can read the stories, but you can also access the digital copy of the Informer newspaper. And while you're there, please consider subscribing to the Washington Informer online. There's a subscription form there. We also ask for donations, of course. We're not a nonprofit, but we're a newspaper that's trying to support journalism and support Black journalists. So every dollar that you provide helps us to pay for our, I think, one of the best newspaper staffs in the country. Beyond, I mean, I don't care who you're talking about, black, white, any kind of newspaper. I think the Informer has the best team, and I'm proud of them. And every dollar, dime, nickel, quarter you give helps to support them. But also, you can subscribe for free, and because that's where we'll send you the copy of the newspaper every week. We'll send you news up to the minute, a daily news blast, keep you up to date on COVID and some other exciting plans that we have for the coming year. So we want to see our numbers grow, and we can only do that by making sure that our family grows, and you are a part of our family. So what makes this, I keep talking about the Informer staff, and you've met some of them along the way. I know when we had our 50th anniversary, we talked to a few of our 56th anniversary, 57th, I've forgotten, Chevy. Anyway, 57th anniversary in October. Time is passing. Oh, hey you all, I had a birthday. Ha ha ha, day after Christmas. And I did get a lot of birthday wishes from you all, and I will be acknowledging them. So I want to thank you so very much for that. But, you know, let's not talk about birthdays right now. What we do want to talk about is the fact that our team has been out there, and I got to say this. Kwame Brown just said something on the show. He had me as a host, as a guest on his show. And Kwame, if you want to post the name of your show again and when it airs, because we want to certainly share our viewers with yours as well, and vice versa. So go ahead and send us that information, Kwame, because he does a fantastic show and has done some very unique things with that. And so we're very supportive of what he's doing. But moving forward, I think what we're going to do now is sort of bring on some of our reporters. Is that the case, Sherry? Nope, we got a video first. Okay. Tell us what we're getting ready to see. You tell me, and I can tell everybody else about, which is our editorial review. We've been celebrating the holidays, so we didn't practice the show today, but it's going to get better. Take it away.
The year 2020 taught us a few things. We learned to shift. We watched President Trump order the assassination of an Iranian leader. Jack Evans vacated the Ward 2 council seat, and the Sentinel newspaper shut its doors. We reminded our readers that black and brown voters matter. The first Democratic presidential debate was held. We brought attention to Councilmember McDuffie's bill on the lack of monuments honoring African Americans in the District of Columbia, only 13 out of 150. Only 2 months into the year, and we were crippled by the COVID-19 pandemic, and the District of Columbia had already lost 2 hospitals, DC General and Providence, and UMC was scheduled to close, leaving Northeast and Southeast DC without full-service medical facilities. Consumers emptied store shelves of water and cleaning supplies as if preparing for life in underground bomb shelters. All the while, the U.S. Census Bureau was trying to count the people. Frontline workers demanded protection. Churches had to change how they operated. Mayor Bowser introduced a COVID-19 recovery budget plan. And in the middle of the year, hundreds marched the streets all across the country after watching a video in which a police officer in Minneapolis held his knee on the neck of George Floyd, killing him. We celebrated black dads in the DMV. We brought attention to the lack of diversity in the newsroom. The DC Council proposed a tax increase. Higher education institutes faced unprecedented challenges. Members of the NBA, WNBA, NFL, and NHL staged walkouts while standing up against racial injustice in the United States. We told readers about seeking help to ward off evictions. We watched the craziest presidential debate in the history of presidential debates. The DC Council voted to allow 11-year-olds to get vaccinations without a parent's consent. We voted for president, and we watched President Trump try to overturn the vote. Governor Hogan told us to wear the damn mask, and he also told us to take the darn vaccine. Finally, the U.S. Congress announced a $900 billion economic relief package.
2021 loading. Yes, I like that. Thank you, Chevy. This is the first time we've had her to actually do a segment for us, and I think that sort of captured our coverage of the year. And so much has gone on. It's almost important to reflect back, and it's almost, what did you call it? The bird, the no, you all know out there the bird I'm talking about, the Sankofa bird, right? That sort of, is moving forward but looks backward, because you got to know from whence you came in order to know where you're going. And so we have come a long way this year, and it really challenged us, but we survived it. So I want to now bring on some of our writers. I'm going to start with Serafina Wright. Serafina is one of our lifestyle writers. She's a former editor of WI Bridge, and has really been a team player down there in North Carolina. What's up, Serafina?
Hi, Denise. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Same to you. And Dorothy Rowley, who keeps our website up to date and covering news every single day, coming out to us from Richmond, Virginia. Happy New Year, Dorothy.
Happy New Year to you, Denise, and thanks for having me.
We survived it. So I want to now bring on some of our writers. We're going to start
I'm getting
with Serafina is one of our lifestyle writers. She's a former editor of WI Bridge, and
Brenda Seiler, our lifestyle editor, who covers so much of the arts with us. Happy New Year to you.
Coming out to us from Richmond, Virginia. Happy New Year, Dorothy.
Happy New Year to you, Denise, and thanks
I have to remind you all, do not watch, because you're giving us feedback. So I need someone to cut off whatever they're watching. Thank you. Okay, that sounds better. So Serafina, let me start with you.
Okay.
First of all, again, Happy New Year to you. And my last question, of course, I want to get everybody prepared, is, if you made a New Year's resolution, and what is it? But what is the most memorable story that you covered in 2020?
I think the most memorable story that just stays at the top of my head, it's not something that was super newsy, but it was about the famed architect Paul Revere Williams out of Los Angeles. I had never heard of him until I saw that the University of Southern California was acquiring his archive. And I had no idea that this man is responsible for the layout and design for the majority of Los Angeles, and just his life and his work. And so I love doing stories where it's like I'm truly learning something. And I feel like, if I wasn't a journalist, I probably wouldn't even know about this. And it just reminded me of how many, exceptional, amazing African Americans that we have in this country, and some names that we'll never know, even if they did such, amazing things. We still probably wouldn't know their names, like the Hidden Figures, the women from that movie, the real life, people behind NASA, the Black women. You guys know what I'm talking about. So that just rang true to me, and it made me want to kind of keep discovering more people who had such an impact on this nation and, our history that, we probably haven't heard of. So I think that sticks out the most to me.
Before I forget, I do want you to let folks know about your blog that you do.
Yeah, so I have a lifestyle beauty fashion blog. Started as a hobby, and in a way it still is a hobby, because I still consider myself a journalist, and I still write, obviously for the Informer news publications. But it's just something that is an outlet for me, and I love information, and I like knowing things, and I like being a source for other people for the latest and the greatest. So it's serafinasaid.com, and it's really aspirational. It's not necessarily things that I can afford, but I still like to know. So it's for people who just like to be in the know.
Wonderful. serafinasaid.com. That's wonderful. And Dorothy, I want to move on to you. Thank you, Serafina. About your sort of, I mean, I know you do a lot for the website. You're always posting stories to the web, and you have I think, a masterful way of getting to those stories quickly so that the Informer's website stays current. So talk to me about, what you do, but what you think was one of those stories that really drove you to get something up fast. So Dorothy, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Okay, I think that would be President-elect Joe Biden's selection of Kamala Harris as his vice presidential running mate. I thought about it, and was thinking, like, who would have ever thought that a Black woman would have ascended to such a position given the times that we're living in? I was really driven to find out more about Senator Harris. She's a senator in California. And I just wanted to find out more about her, what drives her. And of course, she is a member of the Divine Nine, the nine Black Greek sororities and fraternities. So we really got behind her. And, she has our full support. But that one story was what really got me going because, like I said, whoever would have thought that a Black woman would have ascended to such heights.
Wonderful, and also I think with so much going on with sort of the demonstrations that continue to happen all across the country. I mean, how did you decide, and especially here in the nation's capital, which we covered, but how did what impact did that have? You talked about the times we're in right now. How did they help to define those times?
You know, first of all, these past 9, 10 months of 2020 were bittersweet for a lot of people. Um, who would have ever thought that we would be involved in protest and a lot of hatred from, I don't want to come out and say specifically the White House, but some of the White House's antics. We weren't expecting anything like that. The protests, the Black Lives Matter protests versus I think it was the Proud Boys. They were in support of the antics that were being delivered to us daily by the White House. And I think that was just too, it was too much for our youth, with our young people were watching as well. And what they're going to do, they're going to remember 2020 as a year when they sit down and talk to their grandchildren or great grandchildren. They are going, this is the one thing that's going to stick out in their minds for years to come, that they lived to see this kind of devastation, frustration take place in their country.
All right, thank you, and all that in the midst of a pandemic, which is another issue. Yeah, Brenda, I wanted to move to you too because
by the White House, and I think that was just
Dorothy, we need to get you to mute yourself.
It's too much for our youth, with our young people watching as well. And what they're going to do, they're going to remember 2020 as a year.
Somebody is giving us feedback, so. Okay, all right. Thank you, Brenda. It was you.
It's going to stick out in their minds for years to come.
I need you to cut something off, Brenda, because you're giving us feedback.
Devastation, frustration take place in their country.
You can't watch the show and
be on the show. Is that better?
Yes, it's much better. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Better?
Yes. Yeah. So, I wanted to move on to you to talk about some of the lifestyle. I mean, you've done movies, you've done plays, you focused on some really creative historical folks in. It's not working, Brenda. Yeah.
Are you can hear me?
Yeah, but I can hear all the feedback, and it's.
I'm still hearing Dorothy's part. The feedback from her. There's a delay.
If she's on Facebook. Watching on Facebook.
You cannot watch this while you're on Facebook.
Yeah.
You need to cut off your Facebook.
So, I wanted to move on to you to talk about.
Tell her we'll bring her back.
We'll bring you back.
Some of the lifestyle.
Okay. That's the thing about this technology. Sometimes we want to watch and talk at the same time, and it doesn't work. Let me ask you the two last questions, though. I mean, COVID did a thing to all of us, right? We were stuck in our homes, and it changed our lifestyles, and covering and doing the work that we did during COVID. So, number one, I just want to ask, what did you discover about yourself during this whole 2020 pandemic experience?
I think for me, I discovered about myself, I guess things that you already kind of know, but you have a lot of distractions and life taking place that you don't really have to sit with it. But I think for me, I discovered that a lot of times, maybe when I feel like, oh, I'm okay, or that didn't bother me, or they didn't acknowledge me in the conversation, that doesn't bother me. And I think this year it's just like these little intricacies about myself where it's like, hey, that did bother me. Why didn't you speak to me when you spoke to everyone else? And I don't know if it's like due to the pandemic and just having a lot of time to sit with yourself and maybe examining your own behavior as your mental health kind of takes dips and just keeps evolving while you're trying to survive. So it's like I think I just kind of discovered that I do have feelings, I do have emotions, and I try not to typically let my emotions rule my life. But it's like no, I think this year taught me to acknowledge my feelings, and I'm not less of a person, or I'm not being confrontational or combative just for communicating immediately, which they say is the most effective to say things when it happens. So I definitely think that's something I learned about myself this year.
Before I let you go, Serafina, what does that mean for 2021?
For me, I've been thinking about that, and that, along with other things, my resolution of sorts is in 2021, I'm definitely focusing on my joy. And I think that's like the highest level of, contentment or happiness. And so typically it's like you're just living life and getting through. But this year I would definitely be intentional about focusing on joy, focusing on things that bring me joy, focusing on feelings that I want to feel, music that I want to hear, people that I want to be around. Because, it's like you do feel like, oh, well, I have time to be happy later, or I have time to experience things later. And it's like, you may or you may not, so that's definitely what I'm taking into this year.
How about yourself, Dorothy? Need you to unmute yourself, Dorothy.
I also learned how to slow down and to smell the roses. I also learned, as I guess a lot of other people learn, how to accept change, whether we liked it or not, because this COVID pandemic forced a lot of us to just sit back, look at our life, our lifestyles, and not take so much for granted. We lost so much loved ones this year due to the pandemic that many of us still have no choice but to slow down, smell the roses, and be thankful that a lot of us are still here.
Your plans for 2021? Do you have a resolution? Have you decided on something?
I never make New Year's resolutions. I just take it day by day. But I do plan on, I can't wait for church services to begin again. I would also like to go to the movies again. I would also like to engage in a lot of recreational activities again. It's just like being in the house 24/7, going from one room to the other, and you go out and get something to eat. But it's a routine that's occurred that, many of us are, like I said, we have been taking our lifestyles for granted. And this has really, the pandemic has really slowed us down, taught us that whether we like it or not, we can accept change.
Wonderful. And Brenda, I think we got you back, and I'm not hearing feedback, so it looks like it all sounds good. And so I wanted to start again, get you started on your most meaningful story this year, the one that really inspired you. And then the last two questions I asked was, what did you learn about yourself in 2020, as well as any New Year's resolution?
I had the chance to cover some of the arts and lifestyle. And I must say, during the preview of John Lewis, Good Trouble, was very meaningful to me. It came out right before he passed away. Um, and to be able to talk to the producer, director, Dawn Porter, and get her insights just as to how she went about um, doing that documentary. And of course, the timing of the documentary for us going through murders of innocent Black men and women, for John Lewis to be in failing health and dying on the same day as C.T. Vivian. It put everything, to me, that documentary put everything into perspective in terms of what happened this year, what we've been fighting for decades, and what we still need to continue to fight for. I'm glad that his presence and his life added meaning to create a diverse advocacy network for the things that we need in this country.
Who would have thought that, John Lewis and C.T. Vivian, two, lieutenants in the civil rights era who marched with Dr. King and helped to organize, would depart on the same day. We've lost so many, and I'm glad that you were able to cover that. Go ahead.
To me, the timing of their deaths meant that they were still watching over us. It was a way that they were signaling, look, y'all, we've carried this battle thus far. I'm handing it over to you. And so it was a sign for me. Dawn Porter, of course, also did the Vernon Jordan documentary that premiered this past week, and also the Pete Souza documentary. He was the photographer for President Obama and President Reagan. So she's a very, very talented filmmaker and someone we need to keep our eyes on. In terms of what I'm thinking about and looking forward to in 2021, I'll have to reflect on something that happened to me some time ago. I lived in an apartment complex in Atlanta that caught on fire and I lost everything. And as a result of that fire, I learned how to live with less. So coming into this pandemic, there was fear, but I had already lived with less before. So I had that experience. And people keep using this term. They want to get back to the new reality. There is no new reality. There's a new normal. Everything has changed. So people need to get their mind set on a new normal. That's a term that I heard President Wayne Frederick of Howard University say, and I embrace that phrasing that he uses.
All right, thank you,
And
thank you so much.
You had another question?
Yeah, you've actually you did both in one, so that's great. That's great. I want to thank the three of you all for all of your contributions over the past years, and look forward to going into 2021 with you. I watched a movie the other night, Brenda, on Netflix called The Minimalist. I don't know if you've seen it, but it was quite intriguing, particularly at a time like this. So it wouldn't help Serafina said, but gives us something else to think about as it relates to loss and just getting rid of stuff. So thank you for being with us. We look forward to having you all on rWIN-TV more throughout the year, because we're going to be covering some great stories, and I know that you all are going to be right there with us. So thank you. And that's not it. And we have more members of our team coming to talk a little bit about what they did during the year, more news stories, but we're going to go right now to a quick video. So those are the contributions, the photos from our photo editors, from our photographers over the year. We have so many photos, and the way that we sort of do capture the moment and documenting what's happening in our community, in our region, and across the nation. So we want to thank all of the photographers, Chevry Lassiter, Anthony Tillman, Rob Roberts, Roy Lewis, the team of folks that do so much to make sure that we capture the moments of history, so that many years from now, when folks look back and want to know, well, what were Black folks doing in D.C. in the 1900s and the early 2000s? Well, they'll come to the Washington Informer, and those are the kinds of photographs that they'll see. So it's really a pleasure now to bring on some of the hardest writers and reporters in the region to join me here. Will Ford, Prince George's County. Stacey Brown, national news correspondent. James Wright, city correspondent. And Kevin McNair, editor. We got a couple faces that are missing. We know that there are folks out there that probably might be working now. Who knows? Sam and who else? That's it, Sam. But anyway, you guys are here, and so I'm glad to see you. And we didn't mean to be sexist, so we had the ladies on first and the men on second. But we're all here, and then Chantel is coming a little bit later. But okay, I'm going to start with you first of all, Kevin, as the editor.
Thank you.
What was this was a crazy year, and once COVID hit, I mean, how did you shift? What was your agenda when it came to what the Washington Informer would cover every week?
Wow, that's a great question. I think that the first thing for me was trying to be more up to date and accurate with the news. I mean, that means you have to go from a weekly perspective to an almost daily, if not minute by minute perspective. That's been a challenge for all of us. I'm an old school reporter, and but I would say essentially, even in that shift, what I find really important is that we keep on doing our homework, because it's nice to be able to tweet and Instagram and all those things. But if you're just talking opinion without verifiable facts, you're just engaging people in conversation that moves nowhere except within a small group of people. And so trying to be more accurate and update and tell our people who may not have access to the real news or to the real deal is what I think we've been trying to do. And I've been more focused on.
Thank you. And Will, Kevin talked about tweeting and what have you, but you come in number 2 as far as the most read tweets from the Washington Informer, because just about every event you cover using social media as well. I want to say thank you for doing that. But there's been a lot that's happened in Prince George's County. And so how have you been able, what do you think was the biggest story that came out of the county this year?
That's an easy one for me. And it wasn't something that was sexy. It wasn't something that was real controversial. It was something very laid back. That was the Prince George's judicial race that featured a defense attorney in Gladys Witherspoon, 25 years experience, and April Adimiluyi, 39-year-old attorney who entered her 3rd time trying to run in this race. Now, for most folks, you figure, it's just a judicial race. What does it mean? Well, as I looked more into it, it showed the quirkiness and the uniqueness of judicial contested races, how they can be in Maryland. And that story probably got one of the most responses that came to me for 2020. I was shocked. People really paid attention. But then when we wrote a later story on these ballots, people got more sensitive, because they're looking at it and they, wait a minute, you can't use these sample ballots. No, that's not right. That's not fair. But they paid attention. And I think we gave readers an education. And that's the best thing you could do. besides using social media platforms, as Kevin has stated, I like to write. I love it because you can get more information. That's why I'm not in the TV. That's why I'm not in the radio. Writing is just one of the most beautiful art forms you can have. And I'm thankful that people paid attention to what we did.
Of course, the biggest news of 2020, at least most of us thought, was COVID. But Stacey, you know, from a national spotlight, there was COVID, there was of course, the election. What sort of stayed at the top of your must-write stories for 2020?
Well, it's interesting because with COVID and with the election, of course, there was one prevailing theme, underlying theme.
And closures and all of that, that there was several businesses that opened during this pandemic. James and then Kevin, kind of the same question. I mean, how did you view from where you sit what happened and how people were able to maneuver during the pandemic, especially your coverage? And I see your pandemic is growing us a beard, James.
Well, unlike Will, yeah, unlike Will and Stacy, I had to kind of get. So I had to get on the metro. I had to get on to go to the Wilson building and sometimes to the Marion S building. It's now the Marion S building to go to the mayor's press conferences. And I don't know how many comments I gotten from the general public in terms of of some of the questions I asked the mayor, and I'm very pointed when I ask her, and particularly Dr. LaQuandra, about their response to COVID and what they're doing. So basically, I've kind of had to get out of the house and go where they are in order to get the story. And in terms of our coverage of COVID, I focused on what the community and the community's response and the community's leaders are doing in terms of COVID and how it affects. You just mentioned a second ago about United Medical Center, where it's going in terms of this, in terms of getting the vaccine, people being vaccinated. Those are the kinds of things that I kind of had to do because I kind of had to get out of the house and go to those actual sites and events.
I think one of the things you may have observed, as I did, as I crisscrossed the city, is that there were fewer people out. And again, the impact on businesses, parking lots, for example, the city budget, all of those issues are things that we've touched on throughout the year. But, we'll really get a chance to see what it looks like in 2021. Kevin, again, and then I need you all to wrap. We're going to wrap up. Because I want, after Kevin responds, want each one of you all just to briefly tell me, what 2021 will bring, or what it means, or what top priority will be for you on the journalistic side. Kevin?
So I think in answering the question, Stacy said, the challenge for us is getting out, being there. I miss that a lot. Denise, I like to get dressed up, and my stuff's been in boxes for a year almost, I think, most of my clothes. But you get a news story by listening to what else is happening in the room. So it's not just being at the meeting or being there. It's what you heard, or you see someone in a corner or someone walking by. That's often the real story. We're missing that, and sorely missing it. And so I sometimes find myself almost as a slave to the technology. Yesterday I had problems with my internet, so I was trying to get in on a meeting and I couldn't. It was an important meeting. But that said, we make the adjustments. In terms of COVID, my biggest lesson about it came at my biggest lesson. Are you hearing me? My biggest lesson came in December, when I was ill with the flu and thought it was just a regular flu. And I find out 7-8 months that they confirmed, COVID was around in the United States, and it was in Detroit where you were, and those kinds of things. So I took care of myself the way I always did, and by God's grace, I move through it. But I say that to say how important it is to know what's going on and to do your own homework. And sometimes to challenge the powers that be that may be giving us false narrative. There's a big thing in America called revisionist history. Right now, we're seeing it with the white nationalists. And when we just take the story as it is, we can be the greatest victims or the greatest pawns.
All right. Looking forward to 2021. Real quick, Kevin. What
2021?
Yes.
I'm still working on a couple of books, on Alzheimer's about my mother, and this growing up Motown piece I've been working on for I don't know how long, and promoter locally, Daryl Brooks, from putting his piece together about his tremendous work. But I think beyond that, just take a little bit more time for my own personal reflection. I think I may try to finish this PhD finally. If you give me a few moments here and there, Denise, to do the work. But I just think it's important to. I would say really, really. We've had a couple of young writers come our way lately, and I think it's really important that we emphasize with young writers that while the industry has changed a whole lot, the essential element of being a writer is to be able to write. And that's going to be my push. Not only my current staff, but anyone new. I'm going to be the pit bull, because if you can't write, you can't join. And if you can't write, we're going to teach you or show you. It's just essential.
Right. Thank you.
And
Okay.
Thank
you, Stacey. I'm gonna jump to you. What's on that? What's on your what's in your what is it? What's that journalist notebook we used to use? It had a name, but what's in your notebook for 2020?
Well, a couple of things. I'm going to be a lot quicker than Kevin, I promise. One, starting Monday, actually, for the Black Press, for NNPA, I will be doing a daily morning news update. I borrowed the title from one of my favorite athletes, Isaiah Thomas. It's called Let It Be Known. And we will run down the top news stories of the day every morning, starting Monday at 8 a.m. But the thing that
is that, let me ask you, is that a video segment?
It's a live stream.
Live
yes.
Stream. Okay.
Yes. Right here on Facebook and YouTube.
Well, we're going to try to stream it through Washington Informer News
absolutely.
Too. Right.
And the Washington, as far as the Washington Informer is concerned too, I'm looking forward to this series, Denise, that you and myself and Kevin have talked about, and Ron Taylor, Black Lives Live. We are going to bring to life, if you will, probably a bad way of saying that, but those African Americans in DC who have lost their lives prematurely, whether it be to violence or whatever, and we're going to tell their story. And I'm inviting people in DC to write the Informer, call the Informer if you want your loved one to have their story told. So please do, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
Fantastic, and we will be getting the word out on that beginning this week as well, Stacey. So I'm looking forward to that series. Will, how about yourself?
Well, I'm going to summarize mine very quickly. Continue looking at pandemic numbers and solutions. Combat that, especially in Prince George's County, that continues to record the most confirmed cases in the state. The General Assembly begins its 492nd session, January 13th. It'll be the first time for lawmakers that will not meet in the state capitol as often because of the coronavirus pandemic. And a phrase I always tell myself, learn from my mentor: for anyone, never rest on your laurels. Simple as that. Thank you.
All right. And James, right. Thank you for that, Will. James?
Real quick, going to cover COVID, but the real thing is going to be redistricting in the district. Also, 2022, there's going to be a mayoral and city council chair election, and who's going to pop up to decide to run for those positions? As you know, Denise, in order to run for those positions and any other in the city, you have to start this year, the year before the election, to do that.
I appreciate that. I don't know, this has been a challenging show, but the show must go on, and we are. James, I think I heard most of that. I don't know where this feedback is coming from, but we will keep hope alive. I want to thank all of you all for joining us. We've got work to do. We got a paper to put out next week, and I'm glad that you all have your skates on. You're ready to start rolling. So happy New Year to all of you all. Stay safe and stay healthy, and we'll see you in a few days.
Take care.
All righty. Okie doke. Yeah, so 2020, I think, is still sort of tiptoeing around us, but we're going to get through this. And I am last but definitely not least is Dr. Chantella Sherman, who's no stranger to rWIN-TV. I'm so glad to have you on this morning. Don't laugh at what we've been going through. I'm sure everybody, all of our viewers have been laughing as well, but hey, we shall survive.
Hey.
I want to, first of all, thank you. For those who don't know, Dr. Sherman, of course, has her own claim to fame of what she does in the area of eugenics and programs and books and all that sort of stuff. But she's also, we're honored to have had her as a past editor and now the editor of our special sections. And we've got quite a few planned for this year. So first of all, Dr. Sherman, I wanted to ask you about your 2020, particularly from a journalistic standpoint. I mean, how did things change in your life?
I think it was amazing in and of itself. One of the drawbacks was, again, having to both teach journalism students without getting close to people. And so while I am a lover of Zoom and all things digital, I'm still very hands-on with most people. I am still a great hugger. And so to have to tell people to step back or to try and do reporting in such a way where you're trying to get to the heart of things and look people in the eye, but you see that there's a mask up to their eyes. It complicated things, but I think that we got around it. I think we rose to the occasion. I think that the new trainees that came into the Informer, as well as the seasoned reporters, we went on a learning curve, but we made it. And I think that the reporting showed in that. So that would probably be the most, what required the most strategy, I think, this past year. But I think that those are tools that we can use going into the future. So just another way of doing the same thing, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Yes, within a couple of weeks, we're going to do our Martin Luther King issue. I know we have Black History Month. We do 4 health supplements every year. We've got, older Americans, Black Music Month. We've got a long list of special, not only special publications that we're going to do, but some other things we plan to do around it. You want to share some of that with us?
Well, moving forward, I want to make sure always when we do these supplements that we're encouraging people to, number one, take ownership and responsibility, but to look at things in terms of preventative medicine when we do health supplements, when we're talking financial literacy or sustainability, things that we can both look back at to see where there's growth, but also things that we may need to change that we can actually do the work on so that we become responsible to ourselves and for ourselves, but we link these communities and bridge these communities through the news, because again, Black newspapers have always been the soldiers without swords. And so we go in to fight things, and it's not fighting things from the outside in sometimes, but from the inside out. And so just reminding people that we have the power, as we've had the reporters talk about these Black women who've made this year politically, but have always made a way socially and economically. And we need to bridge that and remind people of who we are and how we do things.
Fantastic. I know that, like I said, our King issue is coming up. I'm working with the MLK committee. We are looking at the theme. Well, the committee's theme is Now's the Time, which was taken from one of Dr. King's speeches. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you sort of added a touch to that for the issue, and we want to tease folks about what's coming.
Well, we're still using that same bridge as a theme, but we're looking at a speech that Dr. King did April 26th of 1967, if I'm not mistaken. And he was at a high school where he talked to students about the concept of somebodyness. And again, he talked about how the society around you may encourage you to be deflated, But there's a process that we have to go through where we desegregate our own minds so that we can desegregate spaces that have not officially been desegregated. And so I think that it's important, again, I always say as a historian that what's past is prologue. There's nothing new under the sun, the Bible says. So you're literally looking at things now that we've seen before. And so we know how to surmount these things. The thing now is to try and rise to the challenge by looking at what's been done and using Dr. King's speeches and a lot of what he said in these speeches and the response that came from the people who were in that audience, the young people, to see how we need to gauge the future and what we need to do moving forward.
You got a New Year's resolution?
Nope, don't do them. Can't do them, won't do them. Just keep the faith. That's it.
Right, right. Well, I have one.
I'm listening.
It's called Do Better.
All right.
Period. Just do better. And so that's it. Dr. Sherman, I want to thank you so much for your patience and for being with us and all the great work that you do for the Washington Informer. And I'm wishing you the best in 2021. And hopefully we will see you again in the coming weeks.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So that brings us to the end of another edition of WIN-TV. We ran over a little bit, but we started a little late. So we are just glad that you were able to join us. And we thank you for watching us every week, telling your friends, telling your colleagues to tune in. We're still going to be here throughout 2021, every Friday from noon to 1. We hope to bring you some great programming. If you have some ideas topics that you think we ought to discuss, people that we need to talk to, events that we need to cover, send us an email at news@washingtoninformer.com. Again, send it to news, N-E-W-S, @washingtoninformer.com. We'd love to hear your comments about the show and things that you think we can do to make it more meaningful to the community. We're not doing this just because, we like being on TV, because this is kind of different. But we're doing it because we hope we're bringing some meaningful information to you. And who knows, one day you might come on and I'll have a new background. Just another subject there. But anyway, you all have a wonderful, safe, enjoyable New Year's weekend. And remember, we enjoy your company here at WIN-TV. See you next week.